What is up, everybody? My name is Chris McLean. This is Hater Radio. I'm here with Ian Gibson, my co-host. How are you, Ian?
Doing good, man. Doing good.
Hey, so another big week. Last week was a real big week, but this week is probably bigger than normal because it is Florida, Georgia. We'll talk about that first, but let's just say who we are real quick. This is Hater Radio. It's a college football media brand. We do articles on haterradio.com that you can see, which Ian will have a Florida Georgia preview article coming up on either probably Friday morning,
It'll
and
it'll be
then
Friday.
yeah, and then some other articles that I do as well. I have one about Kirby's dumb luck, which is the exact title of the article, and just how I thought the fact that he got so lucky that the four main rivals of Georgia are in all hard times that have fired multiple coaches over his tenure. So he's been pretty fortunate that way. But regardless, you can catch those on haterradio.com. You can catch us on all the socials, which are for Instagram, Threads, TikTok, and Twitter X, which is hater_radio. For Facebook, it is Hater Radio CFB. And for YouTube, it is at Hater Radio. And Ian, what are yours real quick?
Yeah, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube are all at GGatorG.
Yeah, so like, subscribe, follow us, follow Ian, get up his follower count. We definitely want to get more people following us for sure. It helps out with the brand, just getting brand recognition as best we can. But let's get into it. This is the week 9 preview. So, and like I said, the first game that we're going to talk about, the biggest game so far for either team is the Florida Georgia game. And I don't know, Ian, I'm really excited about this game, more so than probably any other year except for like maybe 2020 and 2019. Even the couple years before that, when there was Felipe Franks was the quarterback, it was not very exciting to be a Florida fan. Really, outside of 19 and 20, it was the only 2 years that Florida really had a shot against Georgia. And the rest of the time, it's been kind of whatever. And it's frustrating because like I said in that article, Georgia has been lucky in 2 of the games. One, Jim McElwain was fired like hours after the game. They knew that coming into that game that McElwain was going to get fired. So like that was an easy layup right there. And then 2 years ago with Dan Mullen, there was hints of him being fired as well. It going south, and like they obviously they took advantage of those Anthony Richardson mistakes at the end of the half to really take advantage of that game. But I don't know. It's been really tough sledding as a Florida fan last couple of years. I know there's not been much to crow about. It's been I don't know. And what's hurts even worse is the fact that Georgia has been doing so well. Winning
Hmm.
2 national championships, being in the playoff 3 out of the last like 6 years. Going to the SEC championship game seemingly every year. The funny thing is they only have 2 SEC championships out of this entire run, which is like you would think they'd have more, but they've really kind of failed in Atlanta more than they have won. So, which is interesting. But as far as this game, like my thoughts, like I did a little more research than I probably normally do, and I probably should do more. I know it's a failing of mine, but it's just I don't have as much time. I mean, like this is a hobby for both me and Ian. We try to do as best we can with the time that we have. Ian's a full-time student. So like I don't know. But the research I found out, like specifically with certain things, like the one thing that stood out the most out of all the statistics. Now I know Georgia's done pretty well statistic wise. They're like third best offense. They're rushing They're not that great. They're only 47th in the nation, but third down conversions, they're first in the country on defense, and they're second in the country on offense on conversion. So not only do they get stops, but then they get first downs. And but the one thing that I wanted to point out the most that I think is most telling about this team is the fact that the teams that they've played, their combined record outside of the one FCS team that they played, that FCS team actually has done well, is only 6-1. But outside of that FCS team, the record of the teams they played is 16-29. So it's quite telling that their front loaded schedule has been very poor, and that they've been very fortunate to be able to uh, do as well as they have. I think obviously their backloaded schedule is much more difficult. They got Missouri, they've got Tennessee, they've got Ole Miss, and a surprising Georgia Tech team, that beat Miami and that kept Louisville on the ropes the first game of the year as well. So they will have tests coming up, and I think in this game, Florida is definitely their biggest test so far, like by far, and it's not even close because that Auburn team couldn't pass the ball at all. I think they had
Mhm.
like 90 yards passing in that game. And then in that Kentucky game, Georgia outgained them like 600 yards to like 200 or something. It was something ridiculous. Like those games weren't even close. And like, well, the Auburn game was close, but as far as the opponents, they weren't really close. Because I know Kentucky, again had a nice start, but then again they get these easy wins, much like Georgia did as well. So it makes it look like they're a much tougher opponent, and they're really not. But no, I guess what I'm trying to get at in totality with all of this is I feel like there is a chance. I know they're probably not going to win. Like I know that no matter what, how good Florida plays, their A game does not match with like Georgia's even like B minus game. So it's like no matter what, they're probably going to lose this game, and it's a shame. But I still think the defense um, is a lot better than most of the teams that they've played, and I think that will be a huge benefit towards the Gators. I think that they can get some stops. They got a bunch of timely stops in that South Carolina game, and was a difference in how they even won that game, because if they don't get those stops, they don't win that game. And I know that the South Carolina did march up and down the field on them, but I still think that Florida can make some plays. They had the bye week. They can maybe have corrected some things, maybe sharpened up the tackling a little bit. I know that it seems like the one report I saw the other or today about the practices was that Monday was sluggish coming off the bye week, and that the last Tuesday looked better, and that he was hoping that today would be better too. So hopefully the practices have gone all right. He liked how Monday finished up as well. So Coach Billy Napier. So I think there is a chance coming to this game that one, they're going to be motivated, two, they feel like they can beat them, which I think that's a huge thing. I think I even heard Spurrier talk about today, like if you have the belief that you can win, that goes a long way into like the mental game, into like overcoming certain obstacles. And then when you're down, like even if they're down like 10 points, it's not like they're like, oh, I'm just going to pack it in. I mean, they were down 10 against South Carolina, they didn't pack it in, and they came back. um, I think Georgia gets on a slow start most games. They got in a slow start against South Carolina, kind of a slow start against Auburn. If they can get another slow start, maybe Florida goes up, I don't know, a score, maybe 10 points. And, the defense gets a little more encouraged. And, because then Georgia would have to pass the ball more, maybe then Florida can pin their ears back and come after Beck. I do like Beck. I think I'm surprised, now seeing that how well he's done this year, that the fact that Beck did not play last year. I know that Stetson was like had won the national championship, but he wasn't the starter that whole year, the first championship. And I'm surprised that Beck didn't challenge him last year. I guess it was maybe they figured he was too young and that Stetson was capable. I mean, they still won, so it doesn't matter. But I think Beck is obviously better. Beck will more than likely play in the NFL. It looks like it already. And he's got the stature and he's got the stats already. Like he's throwing for nearly like 270 a game. So like when you're putting up numbers like that, you're bound to get NFL analysts looking at you. But no, I mean, as far as their defense, Georgia's defense, I don't know. I mean, like again, they haven't been challenged. Their numbers are up there. They're definitely one of the better defenses in the country. But again, they haven't played anybody. And they gave up a lot of points against Vanderbilt. I know one of the drives that Vanderbilt scored on was a short drive because of an interception. But I don't know. This defense doesn't scare me as much as years past. Like the last 2 years, definitely. Like I thought they had one of the better defenses. But this year, I don't know. I feel like it's kind of probably like a step below that. Not that it's that bad. It's just, it's not as good as the last 2 years. And, with that could be the fact that a lot of the guys that were on those defenses got drafted. I think like probably almost every single one of them last 2 years that were starters got drafted that are not on the team now. So, which is remarkable. It's just how good recruiting wise he's been doing. No, I don't know. I have like, I feel really strongly that this team will do well in this game. I don't think it's going to be like a 20-point game. I really don't think that at all. I think at worst, it's going to be like a 7 to 10-point game and maybe like Georgia scoring late, like a, last 2 or 3 minute score to go up 2 scores. And, that's just what I feel. But Ian, I know I've been talking a lot. I just had a lot, that I was thinking about this. I want to hear your thoughts on this.
So I looked into, and this is in the article too. I looked into two things that's going to determine this game. One of them is obviously defense, and the other one is a big one: time of possession, because these are going to be the main things that are going to make or break the Gators. Here's the thing: time of possession. Florida is number 12, and Georgia's in the top 10 in the country on total minutes and time of possession of the game. The reason I bring this up is because the way Florida wins this game is to just play keep away. Keep that ball as long as possible, make it a muddy, dirty game, and just force Georgia to have to make the big plays. Georgia is a very systemized team. They have a script with a lot of their games, and it's a pretty damn good script most of the time. But with Georgia, if you can throw a monkey wrench in there and you can make them not go the way they want, you've got them where, you've got a chance there. And that's the thing. Florida has to get the best chance possible because I agree with you. And again, it's coming from a Gator fan. They do, as of right now, they are outmatched. So now you got to throw the kitchen sink at them. So one of them is going to be time of possession. The thing is that both of those teams are very even. So that's going to be real, telling is how well Florida can manage that, but also how well the defense can get off the field. It is imperative that in those third down situations, Florida stops them. And it's the main thing is actually going to start on the first and second downs. Georgia, we've seen it all year. You are really for the past like 4 years, actually. Georgia, the whole schematics of their offense is to nickel and dime it and make a high percentage second or third down. Make it, manageable, less than 4 yards. Florida has to at least, back them up to make it like 3rd and 5 yards plus and then get the stop. Get off that field as quick as possible and let the offense chew the clock. The other thing I looked into, and this is more for Florida, how well the running game will do against this defense. Here's the thing. The offense, and especially Graham Mertz, does as well as the running game does. And it's going to rely on Montrell Johnson, Trevor Etienne, and the offensive line. We have seen when it is humming, the offense is fine. Example, Vanderbilt. The other one, Tennessee. The, opener against whatever team we put, not Utah, the week after. Yes. And then when we see when it doesn't go well, Utah, Kentucky, it's a mess. And now you're relying on Graham Mertz, which as good as he has been, you can tell he just doesn't have enough there to just win the game by himself. You're not going to get that from this Gators team. You're not going to get one guy to win the game when it gets down to it. So that is going to be really what it comes down to if Florida is going to win this game, is how well the rushing game is and how well it can complement Graham Mertz. Here's the thing. Georgia ranks 10th overall in rushing defense, and they have only given up an average of 3.5 yards per game. Now, again, against, different opponents, and I'm sure they haven't played one like Florida, but it is very, very important that Florida, shoots to the outside. It's going to be the biggest thing to get to the blocks outside. Just get some breathing room for guys like Johnson or ETN. Give them room to make moves and get you more yards. It's going to be honestly the same game plan Georgia needs to use. Make it manageable. Make it to where you can convert. The other thing is, too, if it's one of these, high percentage passes plays, they have to make catches. Other than Ricky Pearsall, I've seen a lot of drop passes, especially on these swing passes. It is, again, imperative that you have to play mistake free, because that's what it's going to have to take to beat the number one team in the nation. And any team that has ever done this will tell you that to beat the number one team in the nation, you have to play the perfect game. So that's really what it's going to come down to, is time of possession and how well the rushing game is. With all that being said, there's still a lot of factors that go into it, but I feel like Florida will fight and they will hang in there. But it's a really tough ask for a Gator team right now against a Georgia team that's running off 2 national championships. It's just, you're dealing with the haves and the have-nots right now. But you can tell this is going to be a good measuring stick game for Florida, is how well they can fight with the best team in the country.
Yeah, and I think something that neither of us have mentioned yet, but it's definitely the elephant in the room, is the fact that Brock Bowers is not going to be in this game.
That's
And
true.
that, as much as I think his yardage wise is 25% of their pass total, reception total or receiving totals. But it's not just that he's 25% of the receiving yards. It's the fact that you always have to account for him in the offense. And so that makes everyone else around him that much better. I don't know. I mean, I don't think the offense of Georgia scares me that much at all. As far as I mean, yes, Beck is a deft passer, but the receivers, they don't really scare me. Ladd McConkey's been hurt as well, so he hasn't really been up to speed. I mean, maybe he's better because of the bye week, and coming into this week, he'll be ready to go. I don't know. The run game was not too ferocious. I mean, I think they had a good game against Kentucky. I think they had nearly 200 yards, but the game against Auburn, I think they only had 107, which, Auburn's defense is not terrible. That's probably the best part of Auburn's team, is their defense. So, I don't know. I just don't, I'm not I know the numbers are high for them. They're the number 2 ranked offense, but it's just our 3rd best ranked offense. But again, like I said, they're very overinflated because of the fact of the teams they played. When you're playing terrible teams, you're going to get huge numbers. And even South Carolina, a team that is a terrible defense, they were losing to them into the second quarter, and then really need a better second half to really put it to them. I don't know. I would say this year, more than any of the last 3 years, is the weakest team that Georgia's had, and it's probably the inverse for Florida, is the fact that this is probably their strongest team in the last 3 years. And I don't know. I mean, the more I've watched Graham Mertz, the more I've been happy with him. His completion percentage is through the roof for the season, and it was low in the South Carolina game, but it was largely to do with the fact that they had to pass, especially at the end of the game, to be able to win that. So there was going to be a lot more incompletions there. But no, I mean, Graham Mertz, I don't know. I mean, the beginning of the year, I mean, even before, like when they first announced that he was transferring, even I was like suspect. I was like, Graham Mertz. I was like, he never really did anything at Wisconsin. But then, like, the more that, like, you like thought about it and looked into it, was like, well, he was a top recruit coming out of high school. He was like recruited by like Clemson and Alabama and a bunch of these other schools. And I'm like, what? Well, maybe there's something more to it. And it was like, Wisconsin's offense was terrible the last couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
And then Paul Christ ended up getting fired anyways. So, like, of course, that last year that he was there was going to be bad because the coach was getting fired. Like, naturally, it's going to go downhill when the guy at the top is not able to steer you in the right direction. I don't know. I think a lot of people doubted him because of that and were like, "Oh, it's not possible to, for a tiger to change stripes." But it's like, Joe Burrow left Ohio State and came to LSU and kind of struggled that first year, but then like obviously took off that second year at LSU. There's no reason why Mertz couldn't have as well. And I'm not comparing the two. I'm just comparing what is potential of transferring into something better. I mean, Jaden Daniels at LSU as well. He was okay at Arizona State, but really took off really last year, and then this year he's probably the number one front runner right now for the Heisman. And then Michael
Michael
Penix.
Penix.
Yeah, dude. I mean, we talk about Penix all the time. I think we were some of the first people to really be on him, because he was doing things at Indiana, and then he got hurt, and it was like I was like, man, this kid, he's a real stud. And it's just I don't know. I don't know if it's because people dislike Florida and they just want to bury them no matter what. And they're like, oh, this kid's not going to be good. And they're just being haters anyways. Shout out to Hater Radio. No, it's, I don't know. He's obviously knows what he's doing, obviously had talent coming out of high school. And the offense there at Wisconsin was, pedestrian at best. I think he put up like no more than 2,000 yards each year, and he's already at like basically 2,000 in 7 games, which he'll get up to hopefully at least 3,000 by the end of the year. And I don't know. I hope he stays. I really do. I hope he stays until next year because, I know DJ Lagway is coming in, and I know everyone wants to see DJ Lagway, and I do too. But like Graham Mertz in another year under the system, working with Eugene Wilson and Aiden Mizell and Andy Jean and Caleb Douglas and the other guys and Arliss Boardingham. And, Trevor Etienne will be back next year. So it's like, there's a lot coming back next year. And to have a solid presence like Graham Mertz, I mean, as much as the schedule looks very daunting next year, and I know I'm talking about next year, but I'm just thinking out loud as far as just more of talking about Graham Mertz and what he brings to the table for this team. I looked up, I have a PFF Pro Football Focus account through Hater Radio, and I was looking at the stats because someone was talking about Ricky Pearsall and like his quarterback not throwing a on target ball, and I looked at the rates of like adjusted rate compared to like on target completion percentage and everything, and his number for the adjusted rate was better than everyone except for Bo Nix out of all the top quarterbacks. And like that tells you something right there that he's definitely like he's doing something. And I know it's like, as Gator fans, we're kind of like, I don't know, it seems like a lot of them don't know what to make because what they thought was the narrative that he was bad. And so that like now it's hard to really like erase that from your mind where it's like, oh, well, he wasn't that great at Wisconsin, so I don't really know how to like take this as like he's now doing better, so it's not really like clicking with people yet. I think it will by the end of the year, but like honestly, with Graham Mertz, he's very capable. And he's very, like, I don't know. The offense has gotten better the last couple of weeks, especially from the Vanderbilt game to the South Carolina game, and I I think highly of it now. Where after that Kentucky game, I was definitely very down on the offense, and I was frustrated. I know you were too. It was
Hmm.
hard to watch that game, and it was. But in that game, there was a lot of things that really like went against them that was like almost out of their control. Like Arlis Boardingham drops that ball and the Kentucky player intercepts it right there and they score right then. Then that special teams play where the guy is jumping over for leaping and they get the ball back again and they scored right then afterwards. So it's like two things that really change the complexity of the game in like flukeness. Like whoever gets called for leaping on a punt block, I've never even seen that. I think I've heard it like once maybe. I'm like, oh, of course that happens to Florida. And then that interception, besides that, the only other interception that Graham has had all year was the first game against Utah where it bounces off Ricky's hands, where it was like a mistiming almost. And so it's like, just by chance that both of those interceptions turned into touchdowns. And Florida has actually been quite well at limiting the turnovers, which that's a huge advantage in the way they play. They think they've only had 6 turnovers. The problem is they're not causing that many. They only have 4 on defense. So it's still a negative turnover margin. But because they've been so limited on the ones that they've given up, it hasn't been that much of a problem. So, they've played clean football for the most part. The penalties seem to be down, and that's a huge thing. If they can eliminate penalties, eliminate the turnovers. Georgia, in the 2 games that they played against Kentucky and Auburn, they lost the turnover battle. They had 1 turnover against Kentucky, and then I think they had 2 turnovers against Auburn. So there is a chance that Florida can get to them and get the ball. It's going to be hard, but there's a chance there. But anyways, go ahead with your prediction, and then I'll give mine afterwards, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, so I think it's going to come down to. I think it's going to be really close. I think Florida's going to stay in the game and maybe take the lead at one point or tie it. Um, but when it comes down to it, there's a lot that needs to go right for Florida and a lot less that needs to go right for Georgia. And when it's something like that, I think Georgia will find a way to pull away from it. I'm going to go with a 27-17 win for the Bulldogs.
27-17.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not too far off from that. I think it's going to be maybe like a 28 to 20 game, something like that. And maybe even if it's like 30 to 20 almost, if the score is probably 23 to 20 near the end of the 4th, and then Georgia has the ball and they're driving and they score like a late touchdown to go up 2 scores type thing. I mean, it's honestly, it's kind of similar. I think what'll happen, it's probably going to be similar to like a combination of like the 2018 game and the 2019 game, where the 2019 game, I think Florida scored late to bring it within 1 score. And then in the 2018 game, I think Georgia scored late as well in that one. So I think it's going to be somewhere around those 2 games, which I think is about right. I think that's the narrative that'll happen. But again, like we said, this defense is strong. They're definitely capable of making plays. Getting honestly, what they're very good at, what Florida's very good at, is making stops and getting off on 3rd down. And their numbers as far as first downs, they've limited. I think they're right there with Georgia on how few of first downs they give up each game. So that's huge right there, considering that they've played an offense like Tennessee, and then South Carolina offense is decent as well. So they've played two decent offenses already and limited those first downs in those games as well. So, okay, we got our predictions. Let's move on. The next game I have is the UCLA Colorado game. I actually have a friend, Richard. Richard, if you're listening, what's up, brother? He's a fellow union member at 728. I met a while back, and he's going to the game. He was asking me if I was going to go. I think I maybe have talked about possibly going, but I'm not going to go because more than likely I'm going to try to watch this Florida Georgia game. I think if Florida was not as strong as they are, I probably would have gone to the game. But regardless, Colorado is coming in this game after losing, I think the last three straight, except for they beat Arizona State. That's right. So they're like 1-3 in the last 4 games. So I don't know. I just like UCLA a lot in this game because their run defense is really good. Their like overall defense is really good. They force a lot of turnovers, which I think that's going to be a problem here for Colorado. I think they're going to force Shedeur to make some bad passes. And then Ian, are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Okay, yeah, the video's bad for some reason. As long as we can hear, I think that's fine. No, yeah. Must be your internet connection's a little unspicy. Anyways, don't worry. We'll just keep going because as long as we can hear you, it's fine. So I think Shedeur will probably commit a couple of turnovers. I think they're gonna hold them to like less than 24 points. And I think if Carson Steele goes off again, I think, which he would. I mean, he's the kid's a stud. I really am like enjoying watching these games because he's just, a very solid running back that is going to get his yards. And now he's getting a lot of touchdowns lately too. So, with what's his face coming in, the new quarterback taking over for Moore, it's definitely, we'll see what happens. Like I said, we talked about it the other day with Dante struggling. Obviously, he had 3 picks in that was it the Oregon State game, and it's definitely a work in progress. He's a freshman. He's only 18. Like I don't expect a work of art out there from a guy that's just 9 months from high school. He's still learning, and he's got a really good control of the offense for the most part. It's just he needs definitely probably like another year. And he'll definitely be there at least till his junior year. I don't know. I mean, I'm excited for him regardless, but the other guy comes in now, and he had a steady hand in the game against Stanford, and they played pretty well. And they got the win easy, so maybe he comes in and eliminates the mistakes as well. I think they can win this game pretty easily. I think they should win because of their defense. I think they should win probably like 34-20. What do you got, Ian?
Yeah, this one it comes down to the fact that Colorado's defense has been really abysmal. Like we said last week, they do have the worst defense in the league or in the NCAA. And now, they've had these really close games, and then, they win by Arizona State, and then they, give up again that huge lead to Stanford. UCLA, much more balanced offense, much more ready to attack and exploit, especially on the rushing side. I see UCLA just running over them, and again, probably playing keep away because they know Colorado's biggest strength is on offense. So if UCLA just plays keep away for a bit and dominates the time of possession, this is going to be a cakewalk. So I'm going to take the Bruins in this one. I'll say a 34 to 20.
That's what I had. Okay, so
Yeah.
and Richard just commented. He says he's here. So yeah, Richard,
That's
shout out to you, man. Thank you for listening and thank you for watching. Okay, so next game we have is USC Cal. Um, you know, I don't know what to say. I feel bad for all these Trojan fans because it was like the expectations for this year were through the roof, and they've already played Utah and Notre Dame and struggled in both of those games and barely lost against Utah. And they had a chance to win and they just couldn't hold them off. Um, I don't know, man. If this were next year with the 12 team playoff, I mean, it wouldn't even matter. It'd be like, oh, 2 losses, who cares? Maybe even 3 losses wouldn't matter. And that's where it's
Mhm.
like, I don't think people realize how many more teams are going to be involved in the end of the year. Now, instead of only the 5 or 6 teams that have a shot, it's literally not just the 12 that get in, it's the like 10 others outside of that. So literally everyone in the top 25 has something to play for all year. Do you know how much more exciting that is for the rest of the year?
Oh yeah.
Like that, I honestly, I don't understand why people don't realize that. I think they're like not contemplating that fact, because it's like if they truly understood that, they would be like, wow, this actually makes the entirety of college football exponentially more exciting and exponentially more intriguing. I It just baffles my brain that they didn't that people didn't want this to happen. I think this is going to be the best thing that has ever happened to college football. I'm super excited. We're going to get so many meaningful games. We'll get home playoff games, and imagine that, a USC home playoff game against like Penn State or someone like that, or LSU coming out to USC. That would be huge. It would be crazy. Like the excitement level would be through the roof. People would love those games. I don't know. The fact that people, are downplaying this. But anyways, I'm getting off the soapbox about the playoff. Let's talk about this game just real quick, because there's not much here, because Cal is not a good team and USC should get off the snide. I expect Caleb Williams to have another good game. Last year, the game was closer near the end because Cal kept coming back, and that's really, the problem with the defense as well. Is the defense really needs to step up here, and I don't expect Alex Grinch to be long for with USC after this year, but I expect them to recover in this game. Um, Branch with that huge punt return, the kid is amazing. He's such a stud. If you haven't seen this freshman, he's a freak. And who I actually really like with USC is their transfer from South Carolina is Marshawn Lloyd.
Yeah.
He is a stud running back, and I know they're like trying to get as many guys involved, but it's like, man, he's very good, and he like houses he has like almost once a game he has a long run of like 40 or 50 yards, and it's like I would be only feeding this guy. It's almost similar to like how Damian Pierce didn't get as much run as he should have at Florida, which probably ended up being beneficial for his NFL career. But regardless, what are your thoughts before we move on?
Yeah, it's the interesting thing about this one. I actually think this might be another letdown game for SC, only for the fact that Cal's rushing um, offense is ranked in the top 20 in the country, and we have seen USC struggle against a really good rushing attack. With that being said, I do think SC pulls out the win, but I think Cal keeps it close, and I think maybe SC sweeps a bit. And I think it might go to a shootout, but I'll take the Trojans going 35-27.
Yeah, I think USC is going to win this one pretty handily. I think it's going to be like 42 to like 20. Okay, let's move on. to the rest of college football that we don't specifically cover. Oklahoma, Kansas. Oklahoma had that scare against UCF, barely beating them after a failed 2-point conversion by UCF. So, I don't know. I mean, this Kansas team is definitely one that is very competitive, and they destroyed UCF a couple weeks ago. So I don't know what to make of this. I mean, I think Oklahoma should win this game, but Kansas has proved that they can compete with anybody. And I don't know. I mean, maybe this is the upset. Maybe this is the upset of the week. This is a chance for that. You know what? I'm just going to call it. I'm going to call Kansas winning this game just because it's like I haven't really called many upsets all year. There's got to be one some point, and I think this is it because it's in Kansas, and so there's a chance that Oklahoma maybe they just because it's a noon kick as well. Maybe they're just not ready for it. They come out, they're kind of going through the motions. They're not at home. They're on the road. And I think Kansas gets them. I'm going to say Kansas wins like 34 to like 27. What do you got, Ian?
For this one, I agree. And it's almost similar to my thought of the USC Cal game. Kansas's offense is much very skilled in the running attack because it kind of had to be this year. But the bounce attack has really been the best we've seen and most efficient we've seen the Jayhawks have for a while. And they've been, winning a lot more games. And the losses they had, I mean, they did lose badly to Texas, but it's Texas. And then barely lost to Oklahoma State. But for this one, I think, again, it comes down to the fact that I think with Dylan Gabriel being the X factor that he has been for Oklahoma, that he'll find a way to get the ball downfield and capitalize on opportunities. So I'm going to take Oklahoma winning this one. I'll go 38-28 Sooners.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm like, I haven't predicted or tried to predict many upsets, and I think I'm thinking like maybe I should just put one out there. And this has been a game that I know that sometimes bites, teams in the butt, especially Kansas the last couple of years. But it's also, I don't know, it seems like the Big 12, if it's Texas or if it's Oklahoma or TCU, seems like one game a year, these like the top-notch teams in the conference usually get beat by someone like Kansas State or Kansas or just someone comes after them. There's a lot, in the Big 12. There's a lot of really good teams, so you're just naturally going to get nicked one time at least, just because of how good the teams are there. Okay, moving on. FSU going up against Wake Forest. I know I gave my opinion about FSU last week regarding the Duke game and Riley Leonard not being 100% and then coming out of that game. But, in this game, Wake Forest, they've been back and forth with Griffiths. He's been the starter, but then like not doing so well. And they pulled him. And then he like came back in, I think last week when the guy that was in there got hurt. So I don't know what to make of this team. I thought Griffiths was going to be able to take over for what Sam Hartman had been doing. But he's really been kind of lackluster. They struggled. I think Florida State's going to win this game easier than I thought than in the beginning of the year. I think they should win the game probably like 38 to like 20. What do you got, Ian?
Yeah, and I think it comes down to the fact that Florida State is just the better overall team. Wake's total offense, and that's the only way they're going to keep up in this game because we know Florida State is going to put up points. Wake's total offense ranking was like in the 80s this year. There's not enough there to pull it off. Could be wrong, but I'm going to take the Seminoles winning and winning comfortably. I'll go 35 to 10.
Okay, West Virginia UCF. I know this isn't really that big of a game, but it's just more of pointing it out because of our connection to UCF because of we're USF and Florida fans. So, West Virginia has been not terrible. They're definitely like a decent team so far this year. UCF does not have a conference win. Like we mentioned earlier, they had that close call against Oklahoma where they just needed a 2-point conversion to force overtime. They had that close call against Baylor, which they should have won that game. They got blown out by Kansas, and then they got beat by Kansas State. So they're 0-4 right now in Big 12 play since they got into a big conference, Power 5. Can they get their victory here? I think they can, but I think this game is going to be a lot tougher than I think UCF realizes, because West Virginia is not a terrible team. They should have beat Houston a couple weeks ago on that miracle last second play. So I think West Virginia challenges them, and I think West Virginia gets the win. I'm going to say West Virginia wins like 38-33. What do you got?
Yeah, I think for this one, both of these teams seem pretty even, both based on statistics and talent and all that. I think it's going to be close. And I think it's going to come down to a jump ball. But with this one, I feel like this is, if it's going to be anytime, this is it. I feel like UCF gets their first conference win, or Big 12 conference win. As good as West Virginia is, I just think, especially for West Virginia's defense, which we have seen not do well against the passing game, and UCF do very well with the passing game, that UCF is going to be able to kind of slice and dice them. So I think the Knights win. I'll go with a close one. I'll go with a 27-25 win for UCF.
Okay. Next one. This is an interesting game because Quinn Ewers is out right now, and he will be out for a couple weeks, at least they said. But BYU, Texas, it's in Austin. This BYU team, I think, is 5-2. They're definitely, a team that nobody's talking about. They're not ranked somehow, and they're in the Big 12 for the first time in a conference, or not in a conference, but in the Big 12. And they're kind of surprising people. Like, Keaton Slovis has done quite well. And, I don't know too much about BYU because we haven't talked about them that much. I think outside of the BYU Arkansas game, which we talked about earlier in the year. But besides that, I don't know too much about them, but I do know about this Texas team. And I will say their defense is solid. They make enough plays to make a difference in deciding games. And also, they have a lot of talent in their their wide receivers and running backs. So I know that their backup is coming in. I think they're like vacillating between Arch Manning or the other guy that came in last week for Quinn. But I think Texas can win this game. I think they're, it helps that it's at home. That's a huge advantage for them, so that maybe they can, kind of, take BYU out of their game. And, it's going to be tough. It's not going to be easy, but I think Texas wins this one. I'm going to say Texas wins like 31-24. What do you got?
Yeah, I agree with you on this one. Texas, especially with Malik Murphy, he should start.
Malik Murphy, that's his name.
Yeah, he should be the one starting for Texas. The thing is that Texas has help when the passing game isn't going. They got Jonathan Brooks, CJ Baxter at running back, so they have a pretty solid running game. Murphy can definitely move the ball if he has to, and then you have enough, firepower on the, receiving side, Xavier Worthy, Tavian Sanders at tight end, to help out in a tough situation. The other thing is that with all these weapons, BYU has been very one-dimensional. It's been Keaton Slovis versus everybody else this year for BYU. I think average-wise, BYU has only averaged like 80 yards a game rushing. So it's been very, very pass-heavy, and it has been effective. But I think in a game like this, you need everybody involved to beat a team like Texas. I think BYU can hang in there, but I almost have a similar score. I'm going to go Longhorns winning 30-20 over BYU.
Nice. Okay, next one. This is a huge one. Oregon, Utah. Both of these teams have one loss in the Pac-12 standing. So the loser of this game is basically eliminated not only from the Pac-12 championship game hunt, but also any potential playoff possibilities. It's in Salt Lake City at Rice-Eccles Stadium. So I favor Utah on this because it is a home game, but I think Oregon's offense travels, and I think that they can make enough plays to be able to beat Utah. It's going to be close though. Like this is definitely going to be very similar to the Oregon Washington game, where it's probably going to be, a last second field goal or whoever has the ball last type thing. I think Oregon, defensively is solid enough to be able to make some stops against Utah. But I know that Utah's defense is very strong. It's definitely in the top 10, one of the best defenses, like bar none. Like it's amazing how good they are defensively. I don't know if a lot of people realize how solid they are. I mean, like I saw it up close and personal when they played Florida, and I've been watching a lot of their games. I watched the UCLA game, I watched the USC game, and I've watched some other ones that they've played, like almost all of them every play. And so, like, considering that this team is not getting the love that it probably deserves, they lost that game against Oregon State and they looked bad. But honestly, the more I have looked at it or just even thought about it, really, is the fact that it seems like teams go to Corvallis to die because that place is just a death trap. Like no teams, like whatever you do well when you go to Corvallis, you're not going to do well against Oregon State when you go there. And it happened to Utah. They struggled there. Their Oregon State's defense is strong, and right now Utah is limited because of their quarterback situation. I think it's gotten more figured out because Cam Rising is now officially done for the year. But Barnes, I can't remember his first name, but Barnes has done well. And, he's put up decent numbers. He performed very well against USC and, made that great play at the end to really put them in position for that field goal. So I don't know. I just feel like Utah should be able to make enough plays to win the game. But again, I like Oregon a lot. They barely lost to Washington, and I think Washington is one of the better teams in the country. And I think Oregon can win this game. I think Oregon wins this game. I think they win very close. I'm going to say 30-28. What do you got, Ian?
So, in doing the homework with this one,
Yeah.
one thing, and you have to take into account, is Utah. The game is in Salt Lake City. Utah has won 18 in a row and has won 29 of their last 30 games since 2020. And even with that, here's the thing. Their only loss was in 2020 with reduced capacity.
Yeah.
Going back even further, the last time Utah lost a home game with a full crowd was in 2018. So
5 years ago.
yes. So and it was I think in week 3 of 2018. It was a long time ago. Here's what it's going to come down to. I think as well as Oregon is, and I think more talented as they are, Utah finds a way to win these games, especially these games. You saw it with USC, especially with a lot of these skilled games. And you got to go into Salt Lake City. Oregon, as we saw with Washington and in their history, they do struggle on the road. That is the one Achilles heel with Oregon. I'm going to take the Utes with the upset here. This one I could totally, if I'm going to be wrong about one, I could be this one, but I'm going to favor the fact that it's in Salt Lake City. It is beyond, I get the people are nice. You experienced it firsthand, but you want to talk about like not wanting to go to a stadium. That's one of them. That is
Yeah.
a tough place to win at. And again, they've only lost one game in 5 years with a full capacity crowd.
Yeah,
So
that's crazy. That's
yeah, so
crazy.
I'm gonna take Utah this one only for the fact of how strong the defense is, and if they can just really make Bo Nix uncomfortable and force the running game, if they just plug the middle and rush, through those gaps, they can make Oregon's life a lot very, very difficult. And Utah really, they just need to make enough plays, and
Well,
I
I
think
think
they can
that,
do that.
and I think like bringing that up because I didn't talk about it in my like what I was describing the game or what do I think is going to happen. Bo Nix, like I said in that earlier stuff about Graham Mertz, he is the one with the highest adjusted rate on PFF for like how good he is. Is his adjusted rate with completions and targets and everything is like through the roof, and it's like I don't think anyone would have thought that. And that's another example that we talked about transferring. Bo Nix leaves Auburn, goes to Oregon, and he has completely rewritten his narrative to the point where it's like no one even talks about how bad he was at Auburn anymore. Like that's not even like a story. Now it's like Bo Nix, the potential Heisman hopeful. And I think that might be the difference out of this game, the fact that it's in Utah, the fact that these teams are too closely matched, I think Bo Nix is the difference maker in this game because out of either team, well, Savaki is a stud too. I will say he's done quite well for Utah the last couple of weeks, but I just Bo Nix in general, like if he's leading the way and he put them in position to tie that game against Washington, and he deserves a ton of credit for how well this team has played the last 2 years. And I think if anything that he will be the difference in this one. Okay, moving on. Pitt Notre Dame. Interesting game because Pitt beat Louisville a couple weeks ago, and Louisville had taken down Notre Dame before that. So does Pitt get a second scalp in taking down Notre Dame? I don't think so. I don't think this Pitt team is that good. The game is in South Bend. I think Notre Dame is still has a lot to play for because even though they have 2 losses, I think if there's like a slim chance of anyone getting in with 2 losses, it would be this team with the schedule that they have. So I think if they just keep winning, they present themselves as a viable candidate to be in the playoff. Potentially, I know it's a very slim chance, but stranger things have happened. I mean, I think because of their schedule, they played USC, they played Louisville, they played Duke, they played Clemson, they played Ohio State, they played a lot of tough teams, and I don't know. I mean, we'll see. But I like them in this game because of Sam Hartman. I love Estime. He's a solid running back, puts up a lot of yards. The defense is strong for Notre Dame. It's been strong all year. They've kept them in basically every game. They forced USC into a lot of turnovers that really changed that game. I think Notre Dame can force their will on this team, and I think they will. I think Notre Dame's going to probably win like 38 to like 22. What do you got?
Yeah, and for this one, Pitt out on offense has averaged about 20 or so points a game, which is good, but the defense has given up way more than that. And it's not the offense that you can consistently rely upon. It's like 21 to 24 points is their cap, and we know Notre Dame can score more than that. So I'm going to take the
Yeah.
Irish in this one. I think they run away with it. I'm going to go with a 38 to 17 win for Notre Dame.
Okay, next one. Speaking of those 2 teams, because they both played these 2 teams, or at least Pitt played both these teams, or Notre Dame played both these teams. Pitt played Louisville, at least. Duke and Louisville. This is a matchup between 2 one-loss ACC teams. Well, Duke now with 1 loss ACC and 2 overall losses because they lost to Notre Dame. But Duke, Louisville. I mean, this will go a long way determining who ends up in the ACC championship game. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what to make of this Louisville team. I'm really surprised how badly they played against Pitt 2 weeks ago. I really like the guttiness of Duke in this Florida State game. I think they played really well. But again, Riley Leonard is probably not playing. I think they were trying to get him in the FSU game to play the whole time, and it just was not going to happen. And I think they're probably going to have to sit him this week at least because it's just, I don't think he's going to be – his ankle is not 100%. That's for sure. And so I think you need to rest him. And I don't know, like at this point, it's like, how long do you rest him for? Because then the season's going to be over. Because if they lose too many games, they're going to be out of contention. So I don't know. I like a lot of parts on Duke. Their defense is strong. I think their running backs played phenomenally well against FSU. And if Riley Leonard doesn't get hurt, they probably put over 250 yards on Florida State. I think Louisville wins this game, though, because it's in Louisville. I think Louisville wins probably like 31 to like 21. What do you got?
Yeah, so these teams, looking at this, I never had this thing on how similar they are.
Yeah.
And it comes okay, total defense, yards allowed. Louisville was giving up on average about 317 yards per game. Duke, 315. That's pretty close.
Yeah.
Their overall, the last game they played, Duke lost 38-20. Louisville lost 38-21. Okay, what else am I going to try to find a winner? Total offense. This was it. Duke averages 371 yards per game, which is solid. Louisville averages 100 yards more than that, 462.
Yeah.
There it is. So I'm going to take Louisville winning this one. I just think based on that and seeing the talent of Louisville, and they were able to score fast, where Duke, it's very slow and methodical. I think the Cardinals win, and I'm going to go with a 30-21 win.
30-21?
Yeah.
Okay. Next one, Washington, Stanford. I only put this one on there just because I know Washington struggled last week. I think they kind of correct things, and Michael Penix has a better game. I'm going to say Washington wins like 42 to like 14. What do you got?
Yeah, I think Washington gets it together. At least they should. They know they can't fall into that trap again. So I'm going to go with the Huskies winning convincingly 40-14.
Okay, next one is Tennessee, Kentucky. An interesting game because both these teams only have 2 SEC losses. So they're basically not out of the hunt of the SEC East because there's a lot to go down in the next couple of weeks between Missouri, Florida, Tennessee, and Georgia. I think all 4 of those teams play one another in the next 4 weeks. So Kentucky still has a lot to play for. You know, essentially they're probably playing for second in the East because they don't have the tiebreaker against Georgia because they lost them. So they would have to have Georgia lose 3 times, which is almost impossible. And they're already technically, even though they have a tiebreaker with Florida, because they have 2 SEC losses, they're already behind Florida there. So Florida has the advantage on them. And then Tennessee, because Florida already beat them, Florida has the advantage there. So it's essentially they're playing for second in the East almost, kind of, at this point. So, which, hey, it's not a bad thing to be playing for, considering that Georgia is the 2-time defending national champion. But, last week against Alabama, Tennessee got up to that lead. They were up 20-7, and then they, got railroaded by Alabama, and Alabama won like 38-20 or 37-20, whatever. And I don't know. I would have thought the defense would have come to play better in that game. they played strong at first, and then they were, really letting Milroe take advantage of things in the second half. Tennessee's offense has been kind of, I don't know, their running game is strong. Sampson and the other guy are strong running backs, and they've put up huge numbers.
Right.
But right, yeah, and Milton has just been the weak point, and he's had games where he's just been completely non-existent, and you can't have that if you want to compete in the SEC. On the other side with Kentucky, I don't know, man. They got smoked against Georgia, and that Mizzou game they were up 14-0, and then just fell apart, and Mizzou ended up scoring like 38 straight points or something like that. I don't know. It was just, or 38-7 or something, outscored them. And it's just, I don't know what to make of this Kentucky team, because, they beat up a lot of terrible teams, and they were kind of fortunate to beat Florida the way they did. They've kind of reverted back to what they probably are more like. They have a couple other games the rest of the year. They play Alabama, I believe. And, that's going to be a tough game. So they have quite a few games that they may lose, and they may lose the Louisville game as well. So they have a lot of tough games to go. And, this game is in Lexington. So, obviously they get a lot of hype from being there in Lexington, because the crowd is pretty loud and it's a big stadium. But I don't know. I just think Tennessee wins this game. I think Tennessee is a better team right now, regardless of the loss last week to Alabama. I'm going to say Tennessee wins probably like 30-20. What do you got?
Yeah. So the one key thing here, and we all know Kentucky, the offense is only as successful as the run game. And you see that when the run game is going, it's night and day. Here's the thing: Tennessee actually has a top 25, right? I think top 20 rushing defense. They've only allowed a little over 100 yards per game, and that is not, a good forecast for a Kentucky team needing the run game to click in this. Then it comes down to the fact that, what other alternatives would Kentucky have, or would these teams have when plan A is not, going for the offense? Tennessee still has a strong running game. They can pass the ball still with Milton, or he can, make plays himself. You can't do that with Kentucky. It's either the run game or nothing. And this was the other thing, doing my homework. Kentucky has never beaten Tennessee when ranked, when Tennessee was ranked.
Wow.
And they have literally played each other since like the 1890s.
Yeah.
So not once when Tennessee is ranked, Kentucky has beat them. And also almost 40 years of going back to like 1985. I know Florida had the long streak against Kentucky, but Tennessee had an almost as long one going from 1985 to 2010, which people I think a lot of forget, before Kentucky won in 2011. But regardless, 40 years, Kentucky's won 3 times in almost 40 years against Tennessee.
Yeah.
When it comes down to that, I'm going to take Tennessee winning this one. I'm going to go Volunteers winning 26-17.
Yeah, and I just real quick before we move on this one, I know Ray Davis is strong. I'm not denying that. I think Tennessee, they faltered against Florida with Trevor Etienne running over them, but I don't know. Maybe because Ray Davis is almost all they really have, and Devin Leary's been very inaccurate and turnover prone, that if they just basically stack the box, that there's not much chance of Kentucky doing much because of that. So all right, moving on. Ohio State, Wisconsin. This is an interesting game because there hasn't been like any buzz about this game, which Wisconsin's not a terrible team, and Ohio State goes on the road to Madison. Coming off that win against Penn State. They also have that win against Notre Dame. So they're kind of riding high right now. McCord is like piecing things together, having a decent year. not an amazing year, definitely not a CJ Stroud or Justin Fields type year, but he's definitely having a good year. The rest of the team is solid. The defense, I mean, Jim Knowles is got to be one of the best defensive coordinators the last like 15 years in college football. Like what he did at Oklahoma State and what he's now done in Ohio State. I mean, just remarkable job he's done. Completely like just changing the face of this defense for Ohio State to just something that is. I mean, I know they gave up a lot of points to Georgia in the playoff game last year, but defensively now they just look very stout, very stout. And I don't know, their bevy of receivers, Marvin Harrison Jr. and all the other guys there. They have Stover at tight end. They have a lot of playmakers. I don't know too much about this Wisconsin team, and I'm not going to be, like, hey, I know this. I don't know much because we haven't covered them because they haven't played that many big games, and they don't have they're not a top 15 team, so not much really to focus on them the last couple of weeks. This is a big game of theirs. I probably should know more about them, and I'm not going to lie, I don't. I just don't because I haven't looked into them that much. I still like Ohio State because I think this team is strong, but this could be a game that Ohio State gets beat at. This could definitely be one of those games that's like a sneaky game where they're not ready for it. Wisconsin's up. The crowd is hyped. It could be one of those where if there's a turnover or two or maybe three, where then Ohio State just gets behind the eight ball and then they don't come back and they don't win this one. But I think Ohio State does. I'm going to say Ohio State wins probably a close one. I'm going to say 22-17. What do you got?
Yeah, and the only thing really of note that I remember from Wisconsin is that Tanner Mordecai is the QB
Yeah,
transfer from
Mordecai.
us to me.
Yeah.
We talked about him a lot in years past, but again, Ohio State just has the weapons to win these games. Wisconsin, the best chance they have is to keep it, down and dirty in the mud. But the offense has given up over 300 yards a game, and that is just not the right formula when playing a team like this. So
Yeah.
I think with that, and especially against an offense that hasn't been as successful that Wisconsin has, I think Ohio State wins this one and they'll just pull away. I'm going to go with a 31-13 win for the Buckeyes.
Okay, let's do these last three really quick. UNC, Georgia Tech. I'm going to say UNC wins this one pretty easily. I'm going to say they probably win 38 to 17. What do you got?
Yeah, I'm going to go UNC winning this one. I think actually, with Haynes King, it might be a bit closer, but I think the Tar Heels, they don't, get bit twice. And I think they'll pull out in this one. I'm going to go a 27-14 win. You there, Chris? Yeah. If check 1 2 1 2. I can see you. I can't hear you. Yeah. Hey, can you hear me? Why can I not hear you?